After serving 8 years in prison for financial fraud, Gordon Gekko is released. Other prisoners are greeted by friends and family at the gates of the correctional facility, but no one is waiting for him. His daughter Winnie promised that she would come to him, but after the death of her brother Rudy, she stopped communicating with her father. Winnie blamed Gordon for Rudy becoming a drug addict and then dying. It seemed to her that if her father had been free, he would not have allowed this. But what Winnie doesn't know yet is that even from behind bars, Gordon tried to help his son, but he couldn't. After getting out of prison, Gekko devotes himself to writing a book about the world of finance. A few years later, his work is published, and Gordon appears in the news. At that moment, Winnie was living with a trader named Jacob Moore. Jake was interested in watching the story about Gordon, but Winnie didn't want to see her father even on TV. She created her own website with good traffic, but she lacked a real breakthrough that would bring her resource to the top. Jake worked on Wall Street. Unlike his colleagues, he advocated the development of environmentally friendly energy. The company where Jake processed it has already invested millions in laser fusion, capable of making energy from seawater. In order for the development to continue, another 100 million was needed. And Jake tried to convince investors to give them, but was defeated. The head of the investment bank Keller and Zabel was Louis Zabel. She and Jake have established a warm, almost familial relationship. The day the news about Gekko's book was broadcast on TV, Louis gave Jacob a bonus of over $1 million. He advised me to spend the money on myself and my girlfriend. Jake buys Winnie an expensive engagement ring and then goes to hang out with a friend. A beauty laid eyes on him at the club, but Moore did not give in, because he loved his girlfriend. Then he and his friend argued about the future of their company, and Jake offered to invest the remaining $1 million in it. After a while, due to negative rumors, the shares of Keller and Zabel began to fall. Jake, who invested money in them, went bankrupt, and Louis Zabel was on the verge of bankruptcy. He tried to get out of the situation at the expense of other Wall Street banks, but the head of the rival firm Churchill and Schwartz, Bretton James, refuses to help. Louis had done the same thing to his company a few years ago, and now Bretton was taking revenge on him. He convinced Zabel to sell his bank's shares for a pittance. After that, Louis went to the subway and jumped in front of a train. This news stunned Jacob. Louis was to him like Optimus Prime to Sam Witwicky. He was heartbroken, and when Winnie showed up, he proposed to her. Jake didn't want to delay any longer, because the death of his boss reminded him of the transience of his own life. Winnie agreed to marry him. Gordon Gekko gave lectures during the promotion of his book, and Jake and his friend went to one of them. He knew that Winnie would be against it, so he didn't tell her anything. Gekko predicted the financial crisis in which the United States now finds itself, and therefore his lectures were popular. After the performance, Jake informed his future father-in-law that he would marry his daughter. They talked, and Jake, seeing a baby picture of Winnie, wanted to take it. Gordon agreed to the exchange. Instead of a child's picture, he will receive a photo with an adult daughter. In addition to talking about Winnie, Jake and Gekko discussed what happened with Louis. Gordon hinted that Bretton James played a key role in all this. It was he who humiliated Zabel at the council and made his company collapse. Jake started digging under Bretton. He's planning to get revenge for what he did to Louis. After getting the information, Jake began spreading rumors that were unfavorable to Bretton. His company invested a lot of money in the development of African oil fields, and after Jake's subversive work, Churchill and Schwartz lost 120 million. Meanwhile, Jake met with his mother, who used to work as a nurse and is now involved in real estate, and she had problems with crediting. She was constantly short of money, and this time Sylvia asked for a loan from her son. He hesitated but still gave his mother the money. After learning that Jacob Moore was the cause of his losses, Bretton invited him to visit. He understood that this man was devoted to Zabel, which meant he could become his devoted employee. Moreover, he has balls big enough to avenge the collapse of Louis's company and his death. So Bretton offered Jake a job at his firm. He understood that this was a chance to find investors for Dr. Masters with his laser synthesis, and at the same time an opportunity to undermine Churchill and Schwartz from the inside, which means you have to take a job with Bretton. Soon after, he meets with Gekko to give the photo to Winnie. Gordon reports that Bretton facilitated his imprisonment, and he has a grudge against this man. Gekko is ready to help Jake take revenge on Bretton James, But for this, his future son-in-law must set him up with his daughter. Gordon hopes to establish a relationship with her. Jacob organized a dinner for Winnie and Gordon. At the same time, he and Gekko pretended to be strangers. During the conversation, Gordon behaved impolitely, and Winnie left. She had only agreed to come here for Jake's sake, but now she realized that it had been a mistake. She warned the groom not to communicate with her father anymore, otherwise it would all end badly. There was a slight split in the Breton company. Some of the staff, including Breton himself, advocated investing in ultrathin semiconductors. Jake insisted on investing in laser synthesis. All that remains is to convince the Chinese to provide funds for one of these enterprises. And Breton James decides to invest in semiconductors. However, the Asians were in no hurry to part with their hard-earned money for the development of this technology. They wanted to see something else, and Breton started talking about oil development. Jake, in turn, started talking about laser fusion. He managed to convince the Chinese to invest in Dr. Master's project. Jacob met with Gekko again, and Gekko gave him dirt on Breton. It turned out that James had been trading Zabel shares unbeknownst to Churchill and Schwartz, stuffing his pockets. Now his money was safely hidden in Switzerland. All that remains is to get confirmation of this fact, and it will be possible to openly speak out against Breton. Gekko wanted to see his daughter again. He offered Jake to buy a ticket for him to a charity event where all the major investors would be present. Jacob and Winnie will go there too. Jake agreed, but when Winnie saw her father, she didn't want to talk to him. But Gordon was glad to see his old partner, Bat Fox. Because of him, Gekko got into trouble in the 80s, after which he ended up behind bars. Fox was doing well, but Gekko was just preparing to return to the surface of the financial world of the United States. After exchanging barbs with Breton James, Gordon went with his daughter. He convinced her that he wanted to rebuild the relationship, and that her brother's death was a tragedy he was trying to avoid. Winnie forgave him, and the long-awaited reconciliation between father and daughter took place. The financial crisis worsened, and now Churchill and Schwartz had to ask for help from other bankers, while they managed to enlist support. Meanwhile, Winnie informed Jake that she was expecting his child. After receiving this good news, Jacob went to work, where a helicopter was waiting for him. He was taken to Breton, who decided to ride bikes. Jake performed well at the wheel, and then found out that Churchill and Schwartz would not invest in laser fusion. Breton realized that in the short term, this technology could move oil producers, from whom he had a good income, which meant that its development should be slowed down. Upset, Jake quit and went to Gekko. He said that negative rumors about Zabel's company were spread by Breton. Then he made money on it and ditched a competitor. Everything was done within the framework of the law, but the authorities could recognize these financial manipulations as a way to avoid taxes, and this could destroy Churchill and Schwartz. Then Gordon told me that Winnie was rich. He opened an account in her name, which currently has about $100 million. Winnie was going to give this money to charity, but Jack realized that it could be spent on laser synthesis. Gekko convinced him to withdraw the money from the account. Only Winnie can do this, and Jacob had to try to persuade her to meet him halfway. Gordon was in charge of the money transfer, and when the account was unfrozen, it turned out that Gekko had not transferred the funds to Dr. Masters. He appropriated them and then invested them profitably, raising a good amount on this. For him, manipulating Jake, Winnie, and Breton was just a game that could restore his financial well-being. His mother continued to pull money from Jacob. He advised her to return to her old job, and Sylvia did so. And her son had to sell the apartment. It later turned out that his father-in-law had dumped him. He told Winnie all about it, but she wasn't surprised. She was used to her father doing something like that. Jake confessed to cheating on his fiancée. He was talking to Gordon behind her back. Winnie and Jacob had a fight. She decided that Jake was just like her father and kicked him out of the house. However, he was not going to be idle. He tracked down Gordon Gekko in London and offered another exchange. Gordon must return $100 million to his daughter, and in return he will get the opportunity to communicate with his grandson. To put more pressure on his father-in-law, Jake brought him a recording showing a baby in the womb. But even that didn't change Gordon's mind. Although his confidence in his own actions was shaken, Jake left his office and wrote a devastating article about the machinations of Churchill and Schwartz. He gave this article to Winnie to publish on her website, and she complied with his request. This marked the beginning of a major lawsuit against Breton and his company. As a result, everyone turned away from him, and he lost his position. Gekko's company was thriving. Having earned more than $1 billion, he invested $100 million in the development of laser synthesis. And one evening, he came to his daughter to tell her about it. Jake was right there. Gordon asked to take them both back, and Winnie agreed. Soon, she and Jake had a baby, and Grandpa Gordon became part of their extended family.